Morning students. Today we are going to study about outbreeding devices and pollen pistil interaction from chapter 2, sexual reproduction in flowering plants. Let's start with outbreeding devices. Most of the angiosperm plant produce bisexual flowers. It means an angiosperm plant produce a flower that has both male and female organs. Now, plant has developed many devices, and that devices we know known as outbreeding devices to discourage self-pollination and encourage cross-pollinations. Why plant want to encourage cross-pollination? Because an offspring produced from cross-pollination has got greater genetic diversity, and this greater genetic diversity has a lot of advantages. It's even help in the survival of the species better. So let us see some of these outbreeding devices produced by plants so that they can encourage cross-pollination and discourage self-pollination. Number one is dichogamy. In bisexual plant, anther and stigma matured at different times. Okay. There are two types of dichogamy. The first one is protandry, and in protandry, the anther matures before stigma becomes receptive. In other words, we can say in protandry plant, the anther will mature before the stigma matured. Example, sunflower. The second type of dichogamy is protogyny. In protogyny plant, the carpel matured earlier than the anther of the same flower. In the first case, protandry, the anther matured before stigma, but in protogyny, the carpel matured earlier than the anther of the same flower. Example is Mirabilis jalapa. The second outbreeding device produced by plant is heterostyle. It is the occurrence of two or more types of flowers, okay, with different length of style and stamen in one plant. Now let's take an example. Primrose. In primrose, one primrose plant will produce two types of flowers. Okay, two types of flower. This is the one. One flower having a long style and another flower having short style. Okay, you can see the picture. In the first flower, you can see the pistil has long style. Okay, and in another flower, the pistil has short style. So these two different flowers are produced by one primrose plant. Now, what is the purpose of producing these two different types of flower? Okay, the insect visiting a flower will get dusted with pollens on a particular area of its body depending upon the height of an anther. Now, this insect will pollinate only that flower in which stigma lies at the level of anther of the first flower. Suppose an insect visits this first flower. Okay. Now, when the insect visits, the pollen from this anther will be dusted on the body of the insect. Okay, in particular area. Now, when the insect visits the second flower, what happened? The insect is gonna dust the pollen on the stigma that lies on the same level with the stamen of the first flower. Here also same thing. If the insect visited the second flower, you can see anther is here. The pollen will be dusted on the body of the insect. Now when the insect visits the first flower, now the pollen will be dusted on the stigma okay, that lies on the same level with the stamen of the second flower. So this is how cross pollination is encouraged in primrose plant. Now the third outbreeding device is self-incompatibility. It is also called self-sterility. Here pollen germination on the stigma of the same flower is inhibited. Okay, germinations of pollen on the stigma of the same flower is inhibited. Okay, example, potato. So this discourages self-pollination. The fourth one is unisexuality. Okay, plants in unisexuality, plants produce unisexual flowers. Let's take an example. Castor plant produce separate male and female flowers in same plant. Those plants we call as monoecious. Okay, so the separation of male and female flower in the same plant will prevent autogamy type of self-pollination. Another example is papaya. Papaya plant produce male and female flowers in different plants. Okay, we call that as dioecious plant. Now this production of male and female flower in different plants in papaya will prevent both autogamy and gaetogamy types of self-pollination. So now let us go to next topic, that is pollen-pistil interaction. One of the special character of sexual reproduction in angiosperm is the interreactions of pollen with the pistil. Okay, that is stigma and style before discharging the male gametes near the egg. So this interreaction between pollen and pistil is what we call pollen-pistil interaction. Okay. Now this interaction is brought about by a group of chemicals that is present, okay, on the stigma or style, or maybe on the pollen. Now pollen stigma interaction determines the germinations of pollen on the stigma. Now these interactions, pollen stigma interaction, will determine the germination of pollen on the stigma. In this case, stigmatic surface recognizes the specific pollen grain and only then allowed to hydrate and finally germinate. Okay, only when they recognize the correct type of pollen grain, only the pollen grain will be allowed to germinate. In self-incompatible pollen grain, okay, some factors on the exine, that is in pollen grain, may produce rejection response on stigmatic surface. Now the pistil is adequately equipped with devices. What is the devices? It is that devices are referring to stigmatic fluid or chemical present. Okay, and these devices will allow pollen of only the right mating type to function, and then the others are discarded. So selection will take place on the surface of the stigma. Okay, only the right type of pollen grain will be allowed to germinate. The wrong type will be discarded. All the male gametes which originate from same genotype, see which pollen grain are the wrong type. Okay, all male gametes which originate from same genotypes are effectively prevented from gaining access to female gametes. So those will be regarded as the wrong type of pollen grain and will be discarded. Now look here. Okay, so many pollens will be fallen on the surface of the stigma. Now the stigma will select the right. Once the right type of pollen is captured, then it will stick on the surface of the stigma. Okay, and then they will become hydrate, okay, with the stigmatic fluid, and after that they will start germinating. Okay, after germinating they will penetrate and formed longer pollen tubes and finally access to the eggs. This is how selection takes place on the stigmatic surface. The stigma will select only the right type of pollen grain and allow to germinate and access to the egg. So that's all for today. Thanks for watching.